Welcome to Saxon Math lesson number 18, and I'm on page 71 if you're following along in your math book. And our learning target for today is to be able to read scales. I'd like to zoom in real far in, 300% in, and scooch over and scroll quickly down to that right there, the thermometer. We're going to be reading scales today in this lesson. And let me choose a pen here. Very good. This is what I like. A scale is just a type of number line often used for measuring. And scales are found on rulers and on thermometers like you see here and on speedometers and many other instruments as well. To read a scale, we first determine the distance between the marks. These lines here are called tick marks. And then we find the values of all the marks on this scale. Notice that only some of the marks are labeled with their values, but we can use that as a clue to help us label the rest of the values on these other tick marks, depending on how high the liquid inside the thermometer goes. For instance, here it stops at this tick mark, which is not numbered. The first thing we want to do if we're trying to read this thermometer is to determine how many spaces are between 30 degrees and 40 degrees. And we see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. So each space cannot equal 1 degree. If it did, our count would quickly get off. We'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, but there are clearly 10 degrees difference because 40 minus 30 equals 10. Let me show you over here. 40 degrees minus 30 degrees equals 10 degrees. So there's a 10-degree difference here. So we can't be counting by ones. That's too small. Let me erase this and start over. Let's try twos, counting by twos. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yes, that is the number pattern or the sequence that this thermometer is counting by. So if we count by twos from 30, then 30 plus 2 more is 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And we would write that 32. And then we would draw this small circle in the air. That stands for the word degrees. And then we would have to label it with a capital F, which represents the word Fahrenheit. Let me scoot over and see if I can show you that word, Fahrenheit. Right here it is. Kind of a strange spelling. But that is the temperature scale that we use most often in the United States. And water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, which is what this thermometer is showing. And that's very important for students in our region of America to know, because 32 degrees is when water freezes. That's when rain becomes sleet and ice and snow, and we might get out of school on such days. So that's important, useful knowledge, right? Let me go up here and zoom back down to a more normal size page width. We've already answered this example, so let me go to the next page, and here's our second example. Instead of Fahrenheit, this thermometer is using the Celsius scale. Celsius scale. So let's zoom in again, view, zoom 300 degrees, and give me just a moment to scroll over and scroll down. Here we go. So once again, we see that we have this thermometer with tick marks, and these tick marks are also 2 degrees apart. So if we count, we say 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And this is the same counting pattern we were using on the other thermometer. But notice here it has a capital C for Celsius. And 0, if you remember your number line, anything less than 0 is a negative number. So anything below 0, this would be -2, and this would be -4. So we would put the negative sign and then a number 4. and a small circle in the air to represent the word degrees. And instead of a capital F for Celsius, we have to put a capital C. Most of the world uses the Celsius scale to measure temperature. And if it goes below this 0, then you have to have a negative symbol in front of your number to represent that it is below 0. Now, in the Celsius scale, water freezes at 0, which is maybe a little bit easier to understand. Kind of makes sense intuitively that water would freeze at 0 on the Celsius scale. And so -4 degrees below 0 Celsius is below freezing. Let me zoom back out to a normal page width again and scroll down to our third and final example right here. We're on page 72 in your math book. This time, instead of a thermometer, we're using a speedometer. And a speedometer is found in cars, trucks, vehicles, and it measures the speed in miles per hour. In this case, it's miles per hour. It could be miles per kilometer, but since we live in the United States, we use the standard system of measurement. So it stands for miles per hour. And the abbreviation for that is mph. And we get that, let me change over to the highlighter. We get that from the M, the P, and the H. Miles per hour, mph. So how fast is this car with this speedometer traveling? Well, a speedometer is just a curved number line. It's just been curved, that's all. Instead of straight, it's got a curve to it. Here we have 40 degrees, and here we have 60 degrees. And let me zoom in just a little bit. I don't think I need 300, but maybe 200 would help. Yeah. And let me change my pen from the highlighter back to the pen. And we see that we have tick marks here. This tick mark is labeled 40 and this tick mark is labeled 60. And then there are two smaller tick marks and kind of a medium-sized tick mark in between those two smaller ones. So I don't think they're counting by twos this time. If we did that, we'd say 40, 42, 44, 46. This would be 48, and it's clearly not. So they're not counting by twos. So let's practice counting by fives. If they're not counting by twos, sometimes they'll count by fives. This would be 40 again, then 45, 50, 55, 60. Yes, they're counting by fives. So we can see the arrow is pointing right here. And if we were to count, we would say, okay, this tick mark is 45, and then this tick mark would be 50, and finally, this tick mark where the arrow is pointing to is 55. So this vehicle is traveling 55, and then we would have to label it miles per hour, and we would shorten that or abbreviate that to mph. Okay, let me zoom back out. I like zooming because you can easily see some of these small tick marks more easily. We scroll down to the bottom of page 72. We have two thermometers to practice reading scales on and one speedometer. So I would encourage you to solve those practice problems and then complete your assignment. And remember, quitters never learn and learners never quit. So persevere until you've achieved your goal.